warm welcome, subscribers. We are continuing our interesting discussion with Marko Rodin. We've spent about an hour speaking about, a lot of things actually, about his work and how the progress is going. And Marko, you mentioned something in the first segment here regarding that you'd love to spend more time on genetics. I find this very, very interesting, and I would like to kind of ask you a little bit more about that and how genetics kind of dovetails basically with your work and what your findings is regarding genetics.
Okay. Well, DNA is referred to as a double spiral helix. I imagine 99% of the people who think they know what DNA is make a fatal mistake. They think that DNA is symmetrical. They imagine that it's like an oscilloscope, that both waves are at perfect equilibrium to one another, that they that they balance each other, but they don't. If you go and look under images of DNA, you'll see wrong ones, and then the right ones will be where they're heavily offset, where there's this big space in the center.
Right.
Okay. That's because we know the saying, nature abhors a vacuum. That's because it's not empty inside DNA. There's what I refer to as a higher dimensional flux field. The flux is made out of spirit. The field is made out of magnetism. Only magnetism can respond quick enough and fast enough to be able to be always occurring in conjunction simultaneously with spirit. The DNA backbone is made out of phosphates. Phosphates, this is just a technical explanation of my work. I did all this work mathematically, and if I was to explain it mathematically, obviously the radio is not conducive.
Sure.
To do that.
Yeah.
So the technical explanation is that DNA is made out of phosphates. All phosphates are known to have a negative electric charge. And it's known that, of course, with any negative electric charge, there's always going to be an associated magnetic field. And that magnetic field is in the major groove. That it causes. That's why DNA doesn't go in a straight line. That's why it's helical. It's line segments that are portions of an arc. That's why it's helical.
And isn't even DNA a coil in itself, actually, before you unravel it, so to speak?
It is a coil. And everything in our physical 3D world actually is a coil. Our bodies call this mortal coil. And so, to get a little sophisticated, DNA works in a completely different fashion, though, of other coils, such as toroidal coils. The underpinning nested vortices in DNA, their boundary conditions, it's called the world boundary condition, which is their outskirts, align. And they're directly in alignment, oppositional to one another, which causes mitosis to occur. It causes sister strand unraveling to occur. So, essentially, DNA uses these nested vortices for information encryption and duplication, for replication. So, a different type of coil, like a toroidal coil, the underpinning nested vortices are staggered. They're askew, and they have a completely different function. So I'm able to give numbers to DNA and to the phosphates and to the amino acids, and I can numerically I can read the language of them. Instead of creating a man-made, contrived, arbitrary, approximated language, I'm able to actually read nature's language itself. It's like I've cracked the Rosetta Stone.
I mean, if we look at DNA, they of course have the 4 amino acids, and I guess that they individually can be translated then to a number. But there's also
a number that represents a geometry. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I just because I saw this picture that you had with the two helixes, as you say, going kind of more close to each other than more balanced, so to speak. But in between they are so a third kind of line, and that is, I guess, also what you have found, what you just described. And I guess that is there any...
Dotted. The third line was a higher dimensional flux field, so it was dotted.
Sure. And could numbers be attributed to this line or field also then?
The number pattern for that is 396693.
Ah, I see.
That's called the equal potential major groove, gap space.
Mm.
The number pattern is 396693, and then it repeats. The DNA is a coil, and that's the part of the discovery, is that every coil is always going to have a field associated with it.
Mm.
That's how we make all our electricity today, is cutting it with cutting our coils, our copper conductors, with magnetic fields.
Mm. Mm.
Who would have ever imagined or dreamed? I think they're becoming more aware of it now, but when I made the initial discovery, that the same principles apply to DNA, but they do. They're conductors.
Yeah.
So, literally, you could stop a disease. You can do anything when you understand how to harness this. So that's why I never pursued the radionic devices, even though they're so profitable and people are spending money on them. To me, it was just a misdirection to do things on an external basis. I don't like to do things externally, personally. It's my thing. I prefer to work on a micro basis internally.
Okay.
And so that's why I've taken the course that I have.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you think that there could be, let's say, let's talk a little bit about disease then in relation to genetics, as you say.
About the what?
About disease in relation to genetics. Is there a way, as you say, to kind of prevent disease from going into the body? What is the mechanics of this, the discovery here?
You can. On my website is a letter from the German Journal of Oncology, which is cancer, asking to publish saying they believe my work is of extreme importance, offering to publish my work. But I never published because I live in seclusion. I just didn't have the staff to write the article that they could understand. They were citing again my original work on DNA. Disease, like everything else, is a language. It's a form of communication. And why my work is profound, why this discovery is profound, is I'm able to combine all the languages of communication in mathematics and physics together. That's why Russell Blake translated my work on my website. It's called The Mathematical Formulation of the Rodin Torus. He translated it to matrix algebra. He said he never dreamed that you could do algebraic functions using discrete numbers. I found that all the branches of math aren't separate, isolated from one another, but they're all combined, that they're all connected. And so I'm able to extrapolate, get data, information, understand the mechanisms under the hidden processes that are transpiring and taking course. I mean, essentially, using this, you could end diseases, produce unlimited food, because you're able to sequence and build and also prevent anything, no matter what. There's no limit to it once you understand the laws and the requirements. And this is the tool. The ultimate tool for everything in the future will be flux fields. I hate to use such a trite analogy, but I think his name was Bones. Bones in Star Trek. He used to use the shot where it would go, nothing would even pierce the skin.
Sure.
Okay? Everything is flux fields. It's just that simple. Runs, controls by it, exists by it. And these flux fields are all connected with God. It's just that simple. And there's an invisible thread running through all of us that connects us. And these flux fields are probably, I believe, engraved in chrysolite in another world. And nobody ever learned the language of it, you know. I don't really support or propound doing things based on man-made contrivance and guesswork and fudging it and approximations, or even, just crude faith.
Mm.
I have taken faith to a level of technology. Okay, I mean, people are offended that I claim that I can harness spirit as a work wheel to do real mechanical work. I offend people to say when I say that spirit is mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it has a signature. It can be harnessed for. They've used my work for antennas. The United States, the four corners of the United States, used my design to protect it in the late 80s, early 90s.
You're talking about the
Because
Star Wars
they
program
had a
here?
competition, and my design was selected as being the most sensitive and farthest range ever created for an antenna.
Okay.
To protect the four corners of the United States. That was done by Al Henderson, by Signature Antennas.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me to consult.
Mm.
And he got my original book. So, I mean, the brain is the ultimate antenna. The brain is transmitting and communicating with God. The purpose of our life is communion with God, to have divine guidance. I mean, divine guidance is not some arbitrary, accidental, incidental, miracle. It's the latent potential in all of us.
Sure.
Okay, to have inspiration. Okay, communion with God. So I did this work. My ultimate application was to tap into the underutilized remaining hidden intelligence, the remaining, as they say, 90% intelligence that is unharnessed of the brain. My specialty is paranormal psychology, altered states, the brain revolution. And that's why, now the audience, whoever's listening to this, hasn't a clue how I figured this out, how I did it. And it is such a shocker, and it is such a wild ride. Because where I got this math, and how come I'm the best and the most knowledgeable person when it comes to numbers and math and physics in the world, is because of the fact that I was smart enough to know that I could never figure it out on my own, because that's called analysis, and I would have to progress. I could never harness the information, all the new data and discoveries constantly emerging at the university level. So I decided that I would go to God, and what I did is I took out of a very small religion called the Baha'i Faith. I decrypted what they have, their most precious possession in all religions is the name of God. And in the Baha'i Faith, they call it the most great name of God. And in the scriptures, it says it equals 9. And that 9 represents the unapproachable, treasured, and protected energy of God. And so what I did is the most great name of God in Arabic, Aramaic, Persian, the Baha'i Faith is translates to the word glory as the word Baha. The superlative case is Abha, which means splendor, light, wondrous. And so it turns out that in Abjad numerical notation system, Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, that the letter Aleph represents all the vowels, is the number 1. The Ba, or the B, is the number 2. It's called Abjad. The Ha, or H, is the number 5. And the Ha is the garment. It represents female. It's the robe of God. It's the breath. The Ba represents compression, and it represents the trumpet blast. The B, it's male. And I decrypted. I took the letters 2 and the numbers 2 and 5, and I connected them to the number 1 in a circle. And I made this bizarre symbol, which is on the website. I call it the mathematical fingerprint of God. It took me many decades in assembling a team of engineers that were magnificent, and we were able to figure out the application of this code, of this symbol, which was an